Welcome back, everyone, to today's Explainer. Look, if you're tuning in, you're obviously someone who cares deeply about growth. You want to push boundaries, right? You want to become the absolute best version of yourself. But if you've ever actually tried to set a real, meaningful goal, like, I don't know, completely shifting a career, overhauling your health, or even just trying to fix a stubborn mindset, you already know the incredibly frustrating, dark little secret of self-improvement. It's ridiculously hard. We all desperately want the end result, but man, the day-to-day reality of transforming ourselves, it can feel downright awful. So today, we are going to unpack exactly why that is, using some really fascinating insights on the true nature of personal transformation. I mean, it's a question we've all asked ourselves, right? Usually when we're completely exhausted, heavily doubting our life choices just because we decided to wake up like an hour earlier to break a bad habit. Why on earth does the pursuit of something so inherently good for us feel so incredibly miserable in the moment? Honestly, it feels like this unfair trick of human nature. You'd think your brain and body would reward you for making positive choices. Instead, they fight you every single step of the way. Okay, let's dive into this and uncover the actual underlying mechanics of why change feels like such a battle.
So starting with Section 1, Sculpting a Better You.
To really wrap our heads around this, we need to completely reframe how we view self-improvement. It is essentially a demanding process of subtraction. I want you to really let this quote from our source material sink in. Transforming ourselves is like sculpting ourselves. Think about it. When you picture a sculptor working on a massive block of stone, it's not some gentle, delicate process. They're using heavy hammers and iron chisels to forcefully strike the stone, literally chipping away solid pieces of it. The stone actually has to break to take on a new form. And here's the wild part. When you're transforming yourself, you are both the sculptor and the stone. You are literally shedding old parts of yourself. And that impact, that loss of old material, you actively, physically feel it. And this brings us to the dual nature of change. On one side, sure, we're inculcating healthy habits. We're building up the new stuff. But on the exact same timeline, we're actively forced to bypass and break old patterns that just don't serve us anymore. Our source notes that this dynamic can feel profoundly uncomfortable. Why? Because it's quite literally like killing off personality traits that we've carried around for years. So hey, it is absolutely no wonder you feel out of sorts. You're letting go of behaviors that once entirely defined how you interacted with the world. That's a huge deal.
Honestly, if there's just one major thing you take away from this first half, let it be this. It is completely normal to feel abnormal and stressed out. The source explains that whenever we do something unfamiliar and force ourselves to break those old habits, it triggers immense internal resistance. So you know that straining feeling, that overwhelming, pull-your-hair-out desire to just quit and go back to bed? That doesn't mean you're doing it wrong, and it definitely doesn't mean you're weak. It actually means the process is working. You're hitting the outer boundaries of the unfamiliar, and the stress is quite literally just a byproduct of that expansion.
Moving on to Section 2, the subconscious saboteur. So where exactly is all this intense internal resistance coming from? Well, our true villain here is our own overprotective brain. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is this concept of consent. See, even though your conscious logical mind totally knows you're making a change for your own good, your subconscious brain, it flat out refuses to give its consent. It actively withholds permission until the new behavior becomes a recognized normal. Until then, it treats your brand new healthy habit as an absolute threat. Our brains have developed an incredible immunity against any kind of change. Fundamentally, that's because change represents uncertainty. And uncertainty, to our primitive lizard brain, means danger. Let's look a little closer at what the subconscious is actually programmed to do day in and day out. According to the source, these are its prime directives. It wants to conserve energy. It wants to strictly avoid pain. It relentlessly seeks instant pleasure. It completely avoids risk and uncertainty at all costs. It actively ducks failure and rejection. And socially, it desperately craves adoration. It wants to be put on a pedestal, and it demands constant empathy. I mean, if you read through that list, it basically sounds like a highly sensitive, comfort-seeking toddler. Your subconscious is essentially this lazy, overprotective guardian whose idea of a perfect day is doing absolutely zero on the couch.
And this brilliantly illustrates the fundamental tug-of-war happening right inside your head. Instant pleasure versus delayed gratification. Your conscious mind is all in on delayed gratification. You know, the fitness level you're going to have in 6 months, or that career success you'll hit in 5 years. But your subconscious, it only cares about right this exact second. When you're going through a big transformation, your subconscious brain actually weaponizes this preference. It makes you feel miserable and whispers these highly logical-sounding excuses for why the effort and time simply aren't worth it. It is literally trying to talk you out of your own success just to get you back to baseline comfort. Crazy, right?
Which brings us to Section 3, the immovable object.
All right, this is the ultimate showdown. Our subconscious patterns and habits are, as the text aptly describes them, an immovable object. Just think for a second about how long you've held on to some of your habits. Decades, maybe? They are deeply ingrained, having been reinforced thousands of times over your lifespan. They are hard, heavy, completely stubborn realities. They do not just magically bend to wishful thinking, and they absolutely for sure do not yield to a half-hearted attempt at change. This right here is the massive, stubborn roadblock sitting directly between you and that improved version of yourself.
Let's move to Section 4, the unstoppable force, and see how this builds.
Okay, if we are facing an immovable object, the only logical answer is that we must become the unstoppable force. This is the core physics of personal transformation. If your subconscious patterns are that immovable object, you can't just gently tap them and expect them to shatter. No way. You have to literally hit those hard patterns with immense conscious effort. You need massive momentum to break down the old structure, and then you need enough kinetic energy left over to actually build the new patterns. It's a high-impact collision between who you have been and who you are actively choosing to become.
I actually want to pause here for a second and just let this statement sink in. The text is brutally, refreshingly honest about this. For most of us, it takes everything in us to achieve what we want in life. It takes everything. Seriously, this isn't some casual hobby. It's not a fun little weekend project. Overriding your biological drive for comfort and breaking years of hardwired habits, that is going to demand every single ounce of your focus and energy.
So the crucial point is understanding the exact formula that creates that unstoppable force. First up, discipline. Doing what needs to be done even when you absolutely hate it. Second, commitment. Deeply and truly binding yourself to the end goal. Third, consistency. Showing up every single day, without fail, denying that lazy subconscious even a single inch of ground. Fourth, persistence. Continuing to push forward when that internal resistance flares up. And finally, fifth, perseverance. The ability to just endure the pain of that sculpting process over the long haul. When you stack these 5 elements together, you generate the sheer, undeniable force required to transform into an improved version of yourself.
And that brings us to the final question you have to answer for yourself today. We've seen exactly why change hurts so much. We know your subconscious is desperately trying to pull you back into the safety of instant pleasure and those cozy old habits. The battle lines are completely drawn. So, tomorrow morning when that alarm goes off, or when things get stressful and the internal resistance hits you like a brick wall, what are you going to choose? Will you let your overprotective brain keep you comfortable and stagnant? Or will you gather your discipline and consistency and become the unstoppable force of your own transformation? The choice is entirely yours. Keep learning, keep pushing, and I'll see you in the next explainer.